Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you a really simple technique for painting red cloth. It's not particularly groundbreaking, pretty straightforward, but I thought I'd add it to the channel nevertheless. So I'm going to use my undead Vostroyan here, continuing on from the last video where we did the sort of oxidized brass. And the first step is to undercoat all the areas you need red with a Khorne Red, right? So nothing to this first step really, but I will add a little bit of water to the bristles here because Khorne Red is quite a thick paint as it is a base coat paint, so you don't want to apply it too heavily. And I'm going over just an undercoat here of grey cere, the spray paint. So yeah, that's all it is for the first step. I'm just going to undercoat all the areas I need in the Khorne Red. So I'll see you in a second. There we go. Well, it took me more than a second because I forgot how annoying painting the inside of his torn greatcoat is. Never mind. So the next step, we're going to need to use Mephiston Red, right? And ideally we want to cover almost all of the Khorne Red layer, leaving just some of the sort of recessed areas. So like you can see the sort of fold in this fabric hopefully, so I might leave the very inner line here as the darker red, but then pretty much all of the rest of his cloak is going to be painted this slightly lighter mid-tone red. Keep painting this little hole closed. So yeah, pretty simple again. Right, so leave it with me and I'll see you in a tick. There we go. With the mid layer done, we can move on to the highlight, and for this I'm going to mix Mephiston Red with the Screaming Skull. Right, so we're definitely going to water this down a little bit. I think, if memory serves, the sort of mix I want is 2 parts red, right, do that not to dirty up the Screaming Skull, and 1 part Screaming Skull. Yeah, that's pretty much the shade I need to begin with. Now I'm just going to add a little bit of water into this, and I'm going to get rid of my standard brush and use well, what I call my fine detail in actual fact is just an old brush that's lost pretty much all of its bristles, but it does the same sort of job, right? So what we want to try and do is along the lines of some of these folds in the fabric, we're just going to paint along the sort of flow, a bit like that, if I can get it into focus. There we go, just about see it. Right, so we're going to pick out the flow of the fabric, running along the lines of maybe the darker red that we've left. And I'm also going to go and edge highlight pretty much all of the cloth here. Now, the tattered cloth makes this job a little bit more of a pain because there's many different folds and creases and whatnot, but the effect is, well, worth it in the end if I don't say so myself. Right, so I'm just going to go around, pick out all of these edges just like that. And to not turn this into another little segment for me to cut together, I'm going to jump to the next step where I add a tiny bit more Screaming Skull. It says that was a lot more Screaming Skull. Never mind. Right. Blend it in, so we've probably got sort of 2 parts, or equal parts really. 1 part Mephiston, 1 part Screaming Skull. Just add a little bit more water in it. So this would be the next step if I had done all of the edge highlighting. Right. And I'm just going to pick out the very edges of some of these tattered corners here. Right, so they're the very, very edge. I'm going to pick out like so. Right, let's see if I can bring it into focus. So yeah, so this one here is a good example where the 2 parts Mephiston, 1 part Screaming Skull is down this part, but then the equal parts is right on the corner here. Just like that. So yeah, I'm going to crack on and finish all this off, and see you in a bit. There we go. So with all that done, we can do the final layer, which is breaking out the Carroburg Crimson shade. Right, now I have given that a good shake, haven't I? Good. So very, very simple again. We're going to apply a light sort of coat of this Carroburg Crimson over the work we've been doing. Right, so again, just a light coat. Anything too heavy, you'll just pull at the bottom of the fabric and kind of ruin the work we've been doing. So right, that's a good example of what not to do. See, it's all building up there. We don't really want that. So I'm just going to brush it away. Just like that. So it's a bit more of an even coat. Right, but you can see how it's sort of pooling in the recess there. Now, if you're doing a light coat with a shade, it's best to remember to do 1 big patch altogether. Right, if I had done half of this, done the arm, then come back to the other half, you won't get this sort of nice little blend between the two, because you've got effectively 1 layer that's dried and then another layer that's going to overlap it slightly. You'll see that mark. So yeah, just to bear that in mind. So I'm going to paint all of this bit before I even begin to try and do this bit, if you follow me. So there we go. Let me finish that off and I'll show you what it looks like dry. There we go. That's it all done. So pretty straightforward really. Not a very complicated technique, but I think it works really for tabletop, whatnot. So just a simple base coat, mid layer, highlight, and then shade over top. You can use that technique for pretty much any sort of cloth really, just to swap out the colours, but I would always use the Screaming Skull as a mix into the mid layer for the highlight. I find it just mutes the highlight a little bit more than if, for example, we were using sort of a Evil Sun Scarlet, like a bright red. You'd get a bit more of a, it wouldn't look as natural as using the Screaming Skull, in my opinion. So I basically use that paint to highlight an awful lot of things. The old Screaming Skull there. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you found this useful, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel, because it really helps me out, and I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.